to talk a little bit about reflection, because reflection is an important part of the learning process. I like to think it as kind of like an athlete or perhaps a musician is looking at a performance of themselves, or perhaps looking at film on a game and kind of seeing themselves play and seeing all the wonderful things that you did and all of the terrible things that you did. So reflection just gives us pause and a moment to think about our learning through this unit and how we can use all of the things that we did learn in the next unit and beyond the classroom. So we're going to go through this reflective writing, a basic introduction, and oftentimes you're going to be asked to write reflectively. You're going to be asked in both writing classes and in other classes. So it is, of course, important that you follow any guidelines on it. My reflection might be a bit different from another teacher's, and that's okay. But the aim of this handout is to model some basic ideas. So this isn't the only way, but this is the way we're going to be doing it in our classroom. So what is reflective writing? Well, reflective writing is evidence of reflective thinking. In this academic context of school, reflective thinking usually involves looking back at something. Might be an event. For us, it's of course going to be our essay that we're going to look back on, kind of our unit. And then analyzing the event or idea, thinking in depth from different perspective, wondering why. So wondering, why did I do that? Why was that hard? How did that go? And oftentimes it's trying to explain and then maybe referencing something from class. And we'll talk a bit more about that. Reflection is all about thinking carefully about the event or idea and what it really means to your ongoing process as a learner or as a professional. So something that you might be surprised or maybe not is that most people in their jobs have to do this. So we have a year-end review where you meet with your boss and you kind of set goals. And then at the end of the year, you meet back and you think and reflect, how did I do well? How could I grow as both an employee and a person? So this isn't just for school, it's also for outside of school. So both academic and I would say career. Reflective writing is of course more personal than other kinds of writing. So we are going to be using I, and we're going to be using a lot of the narrative techniques that we have practiced within our reflections. So down here at the bottom, there is an example, and this is a short example, and this is an example from a classroom, but it is not a writing classroom. So it says, specific tasks were shared out among my team members, right? Initially, however, the tasks were not seen as equally difficult by team members. Cooperation was at risk, social interdependence theory. So here, they're bringing in some classroom information and instruction to say, I realize that this is something that happened in class and this is how it connects. So this is kind of some evidence of what happened. So this is what was going on. And this is how it kind of connects to class. And, right, ultimately, this is kind of the end result. How did it go? Well, to improve the process, maybe we need to do this. So thinking forward, and that is really an important part. I'm going to put reflecting forward. Because not only can we kind of look back in what we did, we can also look forward and think about in the future, maybe this is what I should try or what I should do. Reflective writing has a structure as well, and it's important to have a structure just so everyone is on the same page. So think about your reflective thinking, especially in connection with others. It can be free or unstructured, just thinking about kind of brainstorming. But then when we're trying to communicate that, we want it a bit more structured. So this is a basic structure where you start with a description, an interpretation, and an outcome. That should be very helpful in you writing this. So for the description, right, we want to say what happened, what's being examined. I encourage you to be specific. When we talk about writing narratives and we talk about specific moments, this is another time. This description, of course, is your narrative, right? You can use all that showing. You can use all those vivid verbs. You can actually show me as a reader what's happening. The second thing you want to think about is the interpretation, right? Why? Why did this happen? How can you explain this? Or how is it similar or different to other things that you've experienced both in or out of the classroom? And then there's the outcome. What have you learned from this? What does this really mean to you as a person and as a future academic? And then, of course, at the bottom, it discusses how this is just one way, right? There are others. But you really want to think about reflection as an explanation of events. Like, why did this happen? What are we thinking about it? Genuine reflection also reveals anxieties, errors, and weakness, emotion, and I would add vulnerability, right? We want to be vulnerable and show like, no, I don't have it all together and I might not know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm willing to put in the time and learn from it, which is the most important aspect of being a good student, is to be an active learner. We also just want to look at the significant parts, right? We talked about this before, right? 1 or 2 moments. And then, as I said on the first page, we also want to reflect forward, how we can use what we've learned in the future. I have this last page is a vocabulary aid, and this is just to help you kind of use the language of reflecting. So for description, we've already talked about a little bit of showing, not telling, using those narrative devices. This should read like a narrative, the beginning. Then you kind of get into this interpretation, and feel free to kind of use these sentence frames. Maybe you say, for me, the most significant experience was when we workshopped with my group, right? You can say, at the time, right, I didn't think that it was really going to help. I thought it was kind of a waste of time, but I learned that listening to feedback from my group, my writing became stronger, right? Alternatively, or equally important, might be something else that you did, using the revision checklist or something like that, because blah, 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 blah. And then maybe you compare it to something else in your life, right? I've had this experience before where I'm often skeptical, but then I do it and I realize that I learn. So this is just to help you a little bit in the language of writing, but really what it comes down to is I want to know what you learned in this unit. How is it important to you? Why did it happen? And how hopefully the things that you were learning in this class you can take elsewhere in the world.